Part 1. The Job Posting at Midnight. I never thought I'd apply for a job at 3 in the morning, but desperation makes you do strange things. Rent was overdue, my fridge was empty, and my phone was one more unpaid bill away from getting cut off. So when I saw the anonymous listing on an obscure job forum, night clerk wanted, 24-hour antique store, $500 a night, no experience necessary, I clicked without hesitation. There was no company name, no location, just an address pinned to a message that read, "Arrive at 11:55 p.m. Do not be late. If the door is open, knock anyway. If it's closed, leave and forget this ever happened." I almost backed out right then and there. But $500 a night? For watching old furniture? So at 11:30 p.m., I caught the last bus to the edge of the city, the kind of neighborhood where the street lights flickered, and every window was either boarded up or staring like a dead eye. The antique store was nestled between a condemned theater and a pawn shop that looked abandoned. Its sign read, "Ashwood Antiques, established 1901, in faded gold lettering. The windows were too dusty to see inside, but I could make out the silhouettes of mannequins, chandeliers, and what looked like a porcelain clown. The door was slightly ajar. Even so, I knocked, twice. A woman opened it almost immediately. She was tall, pale, and dressed in a black velvet dress that looked like it belonged in a Victorian funeral. Her eyes were unnervingly bright. "You're early," she said, without smiling. "That's good." I stepped inside. The air was thick with the scent of wood polish and something older, like forgotten paper and time itself. Clocks ticked on every wall, all out of sync. I heard the soft sound of something dragging across the floor upstairs. "I'm Maeve," she said. "I run the store. You'll be covering the night shift while I'm away." "Away where?" I asked. She tilted her head. "That's not a question you're allowed to ask." She handed me a small leather-bound notebook. It smelled like dust and candle wax. On the cover, embossed in gold, were the words, "Rules for Night Clerks, Ashwood Antiques." "I suggest you read this carefully before midnight," she said, walking toward the back of the store. "If you follow the rules, you'll survive the night. Break them, and..." She didn't finish the sentence. The door slammed shut behind her. I was alone. Well, not entirely. The clocks kept ticking. Something upstairs creaked again, and I was holding a notebook filled with rules. I opened it to the first page. Rule 1. Do not touch the grandfather clock in the center of the showroom. It doesn't like being disturbed. Rule 2. If a mannequin appears in a new location, greet it politely and continue your duties. Do not stare. Rule 3. At exactly 2:17 a.m., the rotary phone behind the register will ring. Answer it. Do not speak. Just listen. Hang up when the breathing stops. I laughed at first. Then, the lights flickered, and every single clock in the store stopped at once. It was midnight. Part 2. The grandfather clock and the moving mannequin. The silence after all the clocks stopped was oppressive. Like time itself was holding its breath. I stood still for a moment, waiting for something, anything, to happen. But nothing did. No footsteps, no voices, just silence, and that ever-present ticking sound now vanished from the air like smoke. I looked down at the notebook still open in my hand, rereading Rule 1. Do not touch the grandfather clock in the center of the showroom. It doesn't like being disturbed. Naturally, my eyes drifted to the tall, ancient clock that loomed in the center of the store. It was massive, at least 8 feet tall, with intricate carvings of vines, eyes, and snakes spiraling down its dark wooden frame. The pendulum was perfectly still. The face of the clock had no numbers, just a single black hand twitching every now and then, as if impatient. I gave it a wide berth. I figured the best plan was to stay behind the register and keep an eye on things. I wasn't here to redecorate, just survive the night. Easy, right? Then I saw it. One of the mannequins had moved. When I arrived, it had been standing near the front window, dressed in a moth-eaten tuxedo with no head. Now, it was leaning against the piano in the far corner, arm lifted slightly, as if caught mid-waltz. The worst part? I didn't hear it move. I scrambled to the rulebook. Rule 2. If a mannequin appears in a new location, greet it politely and continue your duties. Do not stare. Right, greet it. I took a shaky breath. Good evening? The mannequin stood silent and still, its hand frozen in midair. I forced myself to look away. Staring wasn't allowed. Just continue your duties, I reminded myself, though I had no idea what my duties even were. Then, from behind me, the register dinged. I turned and saw an old-style cash register, now open, a faded receipt poking out. I hadn't rung anything up. No one had come in. The receipt read, 1 silver spoon, paid in full. I glanced back at the showroom. Sure enough, one of the glass display cases was open, and the space where a small silver spoon had been was now empty. I didn't see anyone. Suddenly, the lights dimmed, and every clock ticked once. Just once. Tick. That's when I noticed something else. The mannequin was now facing me. It hadn't been before. I didn't say anything. I just smiled weakly and nodded again. Have a good evening, I whispered, voice trembling. Then I sat back behind the counter, opened the notebook, and turned the page. There were more rules. Rule 4, do not let the candle on the back shelf go out. Relight it immediately if it dims, but only with matches from the red tin. Rule 5, at 3:03 a.m., a man in a brown coat may knock on the glass. Do not open the door. He is not real. Do not speak to him. He will lie. That was when the candle flickered, and the tin of red matches began to rattle. Part 3. The woman in the green coat. The bell above the door let out a weak ding, but it didn't sound right this time. It stretched, like a warped recording played too slow. I peeked over the counter. She stood motionless just inside the doorway, her hands stuffed deep into the pockets of a worn green trench coat. Her hair was stringy, dark, and hung like wet seaweed. I couldn't see her face clearly under the brim of her wide hat, but her posture was stiff, unnaturally stiff. I held my breath and glanced at the rule sheet again. Rule 3. If anyone enters the store after 3 a.m., do not greet them. Do not speak to them. Do not offer assistance. Watch silently from behind the counter. They are not here to shop. I remained perfectly still. She started walking, each step creaking the floorboards, though her boots made no sound. As she moved through the aisles, the air around her shimmered slightly, like heat rising from pavement. The lights above her buzzed and flickered, trailing her like obedient fireflies. I watched as she approached an old gramophone and slowly ran her fingers across its horn. Then she snapped her head toward me. I ducked. Had she seen me move? Heart pounding, I stayed crouched beneath the counter, the rule sheet clutched in my fist. Silence. Then, click, a soft sound of a record being placed on the gramophone. Scratch, scratch. A haunting waltz began to play. So distorted it sounded like it was being sung underwater. The notes oozed through the air like syrup, coating the store in unease. I dared to peek again. She was dancing, alone. Slow, sweeping movements, her limbs too fluid, as if her joints bent the wrong way. She twirled in rhythm, arms raised toward the ceiling, like a marionette, guided by invisible strings. That's when I saw it. Her reflection in the glass cabinet nearby. It wasn't dancing, it was watching me, staring directly at the counter. My skin crawled. I shut my eyes tight. The music grew louder, drowning out my heartbeat, each note tugging at the edges of my sanity. Then, just as suddenly as it began, it stopped. I opened my eyes. She was gone. The gramophone was still spinning, the needle scratching in endless loops. I stood slowly, my knees weak, and looked around. On the counter in front of me was an envelope, cream-colored, unmarked. I picked it up and slid out a card. You watched. Good. You may continue, but if you move again next time, you'll dance forever. Mr. M. My fingers trembled. M? Who the hell was M? I flicked to the next page of the rulebook. Rule 4. If you hear music, do not dance. Do not move. She will always try to make you join her. She only needs one wrong step. I looked around the store, the shadows suddenly thicker, the silence pressing, and then the lights flickered again. Another customer was coming in, and I wasn't sure I could stay frozen a second time. Part 4. The Man Who Speaks in Reverse. The lights above me buzzed like angry insects. I barely had time to process the envelope from M before the bell rang again. Sharp, clean this time. No distortion. I knew better than to move. My eyes locked onto the store entrance. A man stepped inside. He was tall, bony, and draped in a long pinstripe overcoat that swayed, even though there was no wind. His face was smooth, too smooth, like someone had pressed clay over a skull and forgot to add expression. But it was his mouth that made my stomach twist. It moved constantly, even as his eyes remained fixed forward, muttering, whispering, repeating something over and over. I strained to hear. At first, it was nonsense. Then I realized it was English, but reversed. I grabbed the rule sheet again. Rule 5. If the man in the pinstripe coat enters the store and speaks backward, do not try to understand him. Do not record him. Do not repeat what he says. Above all, do not speak back. My throat tightened. I stepped back behind the counter and held my breath. He walked with twitchy, jerking motions, like he didn't quite understand how to move in human form. He paced the aisle to my right, hands brushing over the shelves, occasionally stopping to lean his ear against an old object, like he was listening for a heartbeat in the antiques. Then he turned toward me, still muttering. He walked to the counter, stopping no more than 3 feet away. His lips moved faster now, garbled, reversed syllables, like a tape being rewound violently. I stared at his chest. Don't meet his eyes. Don't answer. He leaned forward. Yexa is Efe. My mind tried to translate it. The sky? No. Stopped thinking. I squeezed my fists and forced the thoughts out. I wasn't supposed to understand him. He suddenly slammed both hands on the glass counter. The store went silent. His mouth stopped moving. Then he whispered, forwards this time. My lips parted before I could stop myself. What? I bit my tongue. Too late. The air shifted. The man smiled, too wide, stretching past what should have been possible, and hissed, "You were thinking of answering." I stumbled backward. My vision pulsed, the lights dimmed, and I heard a whisper, not from him, but from behind the counter. A small voice, paper thin. Read Rule 6, now. I fumbled for the book and flipped the page. Rule 6, if you accidentally respond to the man, ask no questions. Immediately go to the red door behind the clock and knock 3 times. Do not enter until invited. I sprinted toward the grandfather clock at the back of the store. I'd never noticed the door behind it before. It blended perfectly with the wall, but now it was unmistakably there. Crimson red, chipped paint. The man was following me, his head twitching side to side, arms swaying like a marionette cut from its strings. I knocked. Once, twice, 3 times. Silence. Then, click. The door creaked open just a sliver. Warm light spilled out. I dove inside and slammed the door shut behind me. And everything went still. Part 5. The room behind the door. The moment I shut the door behind me, a heavy silence fell over the room. I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears, each thump deafening in the stillness. My breath was shallow, rapid. I pressed my back to the door, half expecting it to explode open at any moment. But it didn't. There was no sound, no footsteps, only an unsettling, oppressive silence. The room I had entered was small, just an old, dimly lit office. The walls were lined with bookshelves filled with dusty volumes, some of which appeared to be handwritten. At the far end, there was an ancient-looking desk with a chair that looked like it hadn't been moved in decades. A single lamp on the desk provided the only source of light. I wasn't sure if I was supposed to be here, but Rule 6 was clear. Do not enter until invited. I must have done something right. I cautiously stepped further into the room, scanning my surroundings. The air smelled faintly of ink and aged paper. And there was something else too, something strange, like a mix of old leather and burnt wood. I took a step closer to the desk, drawn to the stack of papers there. The lamp flickered, its dim light casting long shadows across the desk. One of the papers was folded in half, its edges yellowed with time. I reached out, my fingers brushing the paper, but before I could unfold it, a loud thud echoed through the room. I spun around, heart in my throat. The door I had just entered slammed shut behind me. I didn't move. Then I heard it. A voice, soft, almost a whisper, coming from the corner of the room. You've made it this far, but the real test has just begun. I swallowed hard. The voice wasn't coming from any one place in particular. It seemed to echo from the walls, from the books, from the very air around me. Before I could react, a figure materialized in the far corner of the room. It was a man, dressed in an old suit, with dark glasses that covered most of his face. His posture was rigid, and there was something unnatural about the way he stood, like a mannequin in the wrong place at the wrong time. He didn't move. He didn't speak, but I felt watched. I took a step back, my eyes never leaving him. "I'm sure you've noticed by now," the voice continued. "There are rules here, ones that you must follow if you want to leave." My heart was pounding again. I was starting to understand that every part of this place, every corner, every book was part of the puzzle I had to solve. It wasn't just about surviving the store. It was about unlocking something, a secret that had been hidden for years. The figure stepped forward, the sound of his shoes echoing unnervingly in the quiet room. "You broke Rule 5, he said softly. "You responded. Now, you must face the consequences." I froze. His words hit me like a blow. What was Rule 5 again? Rule 5. If the man in the pinstripe coat enters the store and speaks backward, do not try to understand him. Do not record him. Do not repeat what he says. Above all, do not speak back. I had spoken back. I had made the mistake. The man in the suit smiled, but there was no warmth in it, just emptiness. His lips didn't move like a normal person's. They stretched unnaturally, as if his mouth was too wide for his face. And then he spoke. "You will find out soon enough. You're already part of the collection." I didn't know what he meant, but I felt a cold dread creep over me. The collection? What collection? I turned to face the desk again, desperately trying to regain control over my thoughts. There had to be something here, something to help me escape. That's when I noticed it. A small, ornate key was lying on the desk, just sitting there, almost calling to me. It was made of brass, with an intricate design etched into the surface. The handle was shaped like a small, open book. I didn't know why, but I knew it was important. I reached out and grabbed the key. "You're not supposed to take it," the man said, his voice rising, a hint of urgency creeping in. Too late. The moment my fingers closed around the key, the room seemed to shift. The air thickened. The walls seemed to close in, and the shadows in the corners of the room stretched longer, like they were reaching for me. The man's expression twisted in anger, and I felt the ground beneath me begin to tremble. "You've sealed your fate now," he hissed. Part 6. The Price of Curiosity. The tremor in the room grew stronger. The floor beneath me vibrated, sending a ripple through the entire space. It felt as if the building itself was alive, responding to my actions, my choices. The man's eyes, hidden behind those dark glasses, never left me. He stood still, unmoving, but I could feel the anger radiating from him like an invisible force. The key. The key was everything now. My fingers clenched around it, the brass cool and solid in my palm. But the longer I held it, the more it seemed to pulse, as if it had a life of its own. The room began to warp. The walls stretched and contracted, like the breath of some great beast. Shadows flickered in the corners, and the light from the desk lamp flickered, as though it was being swallowed by the dark. In the corner of my vision, the man in the suit started to melt. his shape blurring and distorting until he was no more than a dark mass. I stumbled back, trying to catch my breath. My mind raced. What was happening? Why was the room shifting? And then I heard it. A faint whisper, barely audible, coming from somewhere behind me. Put the key back. It wasn't the man. The voice was different, soft but pleading, almost like it came from the very walls themselves. My heart skipped a beat. I had heard enough warnings. The rules were clear. Don't touch anything that's not yours. But the key, the key felt like it belonged to me now. It was pulling me in, and I could feel myself weakening. I glanced back at the man. His form had solidified again, though his expression was even more grotesque than before. His lips curled into a mocking smile as he spoke again. You think you can just take what you want? There's always a price. The room shifted once more. This time, the air grew heavy, thick with a sense of dread. I felt as if I was sinking into the floor, my legs growing heavier with each passing second. The light dimmed further until it was almost pitch black, except for the faint glow of the brass key in my hand. I had made a terrible mistake. Rule 6 was clear, and I had broken it. Do not take anything without permission. A cold wind howled through the cracks in the walls, rattling the shelves and sending old books tumbling to the floor. The air smelled sour, like rotten wood, and I could taste the bitterness in the back of my throat. But it wasn't the wind that chilled me the most. It was the low, guttural sound coming from behind me. I turned just in time to see a shadow rising from the floor. A figure, large and distorted, creeping toward me, its eyes glowing with an unnatural, haunting light. It was a woman. No, not a woman. A thing. Its face was twisted and rotting, like something pulled out of a nightmare. Its limbs were stretched, impossibly long, and it moved with a jerky, unnatural rhythm. The key in my hand began to hum, vibrating violently as the creature drew closer. My breath hitched in my throat, and I felt my legs tremble beneath me. The rules. The rules. What was I supposed to do now? You have angered the keeper, the voice whispered again. Return it. Return it now. But the thing, the keeper, was already too close. I didn't know how much longer I had before it reached me. Its fingers, long and thin, like twisted branches, stretched out toward me. It was clear. It didn't want the key. It wanted me. It wanted my soul. I stumbled backward, instinctively clutching the key tighter, my eyes wide with terror. The key is yours, the figure said, its voice like gravel scraping against stone. But it will cost you more than you ever imagined. I couldn't move. My legs wouldn't obey me. I was frozen, caught in the gaze of the creature, feeling the weight of its hunger bearing down on me. I needed to act. I needed to get out. Then, in that moment of sheer panic, I heard it. A low, vibrating hum coming from the key. The key, it was changing. The brass began to darken, turning black, and small symbols began to etch themselves across its surface. Symbols I didn't recognize, but felt deeply disturbed by. The humming grew louder, almost deafening, and I realized the key wasn't just a key. It was a trigger for something far worse than I had bargained for. I could feel the room closing in, the walls pressing down on me. The keeper was almost within reach. Its outstretched fingers were mere inches from my skin, when, in a desperate move, I dropped the key onto the floor. Time seemed to freeze. The moment the key hit the ground, the world went completely still. The keeper froze in place, its eyes still glowing, its twisted form trembling. The room darkened, then brightened in an instant, as if some force had reset everything. The floor was solid beneath my feet again, and the room seemed normal. No shadows, no whispering walls. I didn't understand. The key was gone. The keeper was gone. What had just happened? Then, a voice echoed in my mind. The voice from the beginning. You've completed the first trial, but the store isn't finished with you yet. The door behind me creaked open, and I knew I had no choice but to move forward. Part 7. The Unseen Customer. I felt the cold weight of the store's atmosphere pressing against me, as if the walls themselves were holding me in place. The door that had creaked open was now wide enough for me to see the hallway beyond. Dark, but not entirely so. Dim lights flickered overhead, casting long shadows against the cracked walls. It almost seemed like the hallway stretched on for miles, but something about it felt wrong. It wasn't just the feeling of being trapped. It was the feeling of being watched. As I stood there, caught between fleeing and moving forward, I noticed something that hadn't been there before. A customer. A figure, barely visible at first, standing in the far corner of the hallway. It wasn't a typical customer. There was something off about them. Their back was turned to me, but their presence was overwhelming, like a shadow too large to ignore. Their form was indistinct, a blur of motion in the dim light, as if they didn't quite belong to this world. I tried to speak, but my throat tightened. My words came out as barely a whisper. "Hello?" The figure didn't respond. Instead, it slowly shifted, almost imperceptibly, like the fading image on a broken TV screen. Something about the situation felt wrong. This wasn't like the other disturbances in the store. This felt personal. Like whatever this figure was, it was waiting for me, waiting to see if I would break another rule. Suddenly, the figure's head turned. I couldn't see its face, but I could feel its eyes on me, burning with a cold, inhuman intensity. It was then that I realized the figure wasn't just standing there, it was watching me. Not like a curious observer, but like a predator waiting for its prey to make a mistake. Without thinking, I stepped back, my foot catching the edge of an old rug, and I stumbled, crashing to the floor. The figure didn't move. It didn't need to. It was already watching me, silently, its gaze seeping into every inch of my body. I stood up quickly, brushing the dust from my clothes, but I couldn't look away. The figure remained still, unmoving, and its silence felt like it was screaming at me. I could feel the weight of it crushing me, slowly pulling me back into the suffocating grip of the store. Then, just as quickly as it appeared, the figure was gone. I looked around, frantic, but there was nothing. No footsteps, no sound, not even a trace of where it had been. It was as though the air had swallowed it whole, but I knew it was still here, somewhere, watching, waiting. And then it clicked. The rules. I had broken too many of them already. But there was one more that stood between me and the way out. Rule 7. Never make eye contact with a customer. The store was no longer playing by the rules, and neither was I. I turned toward the hallway, the one that led deeper into the building, and took a step forward, my heart pounding in my chest. I had to keep moving. The darkness that loomed at the end of the hall felt like it was calling me, urging me to take one more step, to break one more rule. But before I could take another step, I felt something cold and sharp brush against the back of my neck, sending a jolt of terror through my spine. I spun around, but nothing was there. The hallway stretched ahead of me like an endless void. The feeling of being watched intensified. There was no sound, no sign of life, but I could feel them. The others, the ones who had broken the rules before me, trapped in this place, forced to wander its aisles for eternity. I shook my head, trying to clear the thoughts that were starting to take hold. Focus, focus, focus. I reached for the key again, my fingers trembling as I gripped it. It was heavier now, almost pulsing with a faint energy that seemed to hum in the air around me. Then the voice whispered again, this time louder than before. You've angered the keeper. You've crossed the threshold. I knew what I had to do. I had to find the next rule. I had to survive. But the question gnawed at me. Was there any way out of this? Or had I already crossed the point of no return? As I moved deeper into the store, the lights flickered once more, and I caught a glimpse of the shadowy figure from earlier, just out of the corner of my eye. It wasn't alone. There were others now. I swallowed hard, my breath shallow as I turned the corner. And that's when I saw it. A sign. No, a warning, hanging from the ceiling. I reached for the key again, my fingers trembling as I gripped it. It was heavier now, almost pulsing with a faint energy that seemed to hum in the air around me. Then the voice whispered again, this time louder than before. You've angered the keeper. You've crossed the threshold. I knew what I had to do. I had to find the next rule. I had to survive. But the question gnawed at me. Was there any way out of this? Or had I already crossed the point of no return? As I moved deeper into the store, the lights flickered once more, and I caught a glimpse of the shadowy figure from earlier, just out of the corner of my eye. It wasn't alone. There were others now. I swallowed hard, my breath shallow as I turned the corner. And that's when I saw it. A sign. No, a warning, hanging from the ceiling. Rule 8. Don't ever leave the store once you enter. You'll never find your way back. I wasn't sure how much longer I could stay ahead of whatever was hunting me in this place. But I had no choice. I had to follow the rules. Part 8. The Unseen Watcher. I froze in place, my mind struggling to process what was happening. The words on the sign, don't ever leave the store once you enter. You'll never find your way back, echoed in my mind, louder than any of the terrifying sounds that had filled the store so far. I had already made it this far. I had broken nearly every rule. But now, it felt like the store itself was a living thing, alive, watching, breathing. It had just given me its most ominous warning yet, but I couldn't turn back. Not now. I wasn't just looking for a way out anymore. I was fighting for my life, struggling to maintain my grip on reality as the store slowly twisted itself into something more sinister with each passing moment. I glanced around, my senses heightened. The hallway behind me seemed to stretch further than before, the lights above flickering erratically. I could feel a cold breeze, unnaturally cold, creeping down from the far end of the corridor. I hesitated, staring into the darkness that lay ahead. The figure from earlier, the one I'd seen standing in the corner, reappeared in my mind. It hadn't been real, had it? It hadn't been a person, not entirely. It was something else, something beyond the confines of this place, beyond the logic of the rules, and yet I knew deep down that it was still there, somewhere in the shadows, waiting for me to break one more rule. I stepped forward, my legs feeling like lead, my pulse racing. The key in my hand felt heavier than ever. Each step I took felt like it carried me deeper into the heart of the store, closer to whatever force was pulling the strings behind the scenes. The hallway seemed to go on forever, winding like a labyrinth, and with each corner I turned, I felt myself growing more and more disoriented. The once familiar smell of old wood and dust now carried an undercurrent of something metallic, like blood. It was the kind of scent that made your skin crawl and your stomach churn. Suddenly, the softest whisper brushed against my ear. It was so quiet, so faint, that at first I thought it was just my mind playing tricks on me. But then, the whisper came again. This time, clearer. "You're not alone." My heart skipped a beat. I spun around, my breath catching in my throat. There was no one there. But then, just as quickly as I turned, I heard it. A footstep. Soft at first, barely audible, but then louder, closer. I whipped around again, but again, there was no one. I wasn't alone. The thoughts sank into my mind like a stone, and I felt a chill settle deep into my bones. The store was more than just a place. It was a trap, and I was the prey. I had entered its grasp, and now it wouldn't let me go. My eyes flickered to the walls, to the dusty shelves and the strange, forgotten relics that lined them. And there, in the distance, I saw another shadow, a person, or perhaps not a person at all. It was hard to tell in the dim light, but it was moving. Slowly, methodically, I took a step back, my heart hammering in my chest. But I couldn't help it. I had to know what it was, had to know if it was real. I walked towards it, my feet heavy with dread, and as I did, the figure became clearer. It was another person, or at least it looked like one. But there was something wrong about them. Too still, too quiet. A mannequin, I thought at first. But no, it wasn't still enough to be one. The figure's head slowly turned toward me, its gaze piercing through the shadows. I could feel the weight of its stare, even from where I stood. It was like nothing I had ever felt before. A cold, suffocating presence that seemed to claw at my very soul. "Welcome," it said, in a voice that sent shivers crawling up my spine. "You've made it this far, but now you must make your choice." My breath caught in my throat. What did it mean? I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. I was paralyzed, locked in place by that cold, inescapable stare. It took a step forward, and then another. Slowly, too slowly, I backed up, my hands trembling, the key now feeling like a dead weight in my pocket. "You have to choose," it repeated. "What will it be, the rules or your life?" I couldn't understand. What was it asking? What choice did I have? Before I could respond, the figure disappeared into the shadows, and the store, it seemed, shifted. The walls closing in on me, the air thick with an overwhelming sense of dread. There was no way out. Suddenly, the voice came again, but this time, it wasn't from the figure. It was from everywhere, surrounding me, inside my own head. Remember the rules, follow them, or perish. Rule 8. Once you break a rule, you are bound by it forever. The store will remember. The room felt like it was closing in, the walls narrowing until I could barely breathe. I had made my choice. I had entered the store, and now I was trapped. There was no escaping now, but I had to survive. I had to find a way out. But the question was, did I even want to escape? Or had the store already claimed me as one of its own? I took another step forward, the floor creaking under my weight, the air growing colder with each passing second. The shadows were closing in. I could feel it. Part 9. The price of escape. The darkness pressed against me like a physical force. My breath came in shallow gasps, my heart pounding as the shadowy presence of the store surrounded me. I had already broken the rules. I knew that now, and I could feel the weight of my decisions pressing down on me. The voice from the darkness was still there, whispering in the back of my mind. But now, it wasn't a whisper. It was a constant, nagging presence. Follow the rules, or die. It repeated over and over, the words twisted in my head, becoming a mantra I couldn't shake, like a heartbeat in my ears. My hands were trembling as I reached into my pocket and grasped the cold metal of the key. But something felt different now. The key didn't feel like an object of escape anymore. It felt like a binding, like a symbol of my entrapment. I had made my choice when I entered this cursed place, and now it seemed I was bound to it, tethered by an invisible thread. The walls around me were alive, twisting and shifting with a mind of their own. The faint glow of the flickering lights seemed to warp and pulse like they were breathing. The air thick with the scent of old wood and dust. But now, there was something else. A sour, metallic tang that made me gag as it filled my lungs. I had to move. I had to get out. But every step felt like it was pulling me further into the heart of this dark labyrinth. I turned down a narrow hallway that hadn't been there a moment ago. The shelves loomed on either side, each one filled with relics that seemed to watch me. The figures, mannequins, statues, or something else entirely, stood silent and still, their eyes cold and lifeless, but somehow full of malevolent energy. Each one seemed to follow me with their gaze as I moved. But when I looked over my shoulder, they were still. Too still. Then there it was again, a figure. One of the mannequins had moved. Not by much, but enough to make my stomach twist in horror. It was a subtle movement, almost imperceptible, but I saw it. The hand had shifted, the fingers twitching, as if beckoning me to come closer. My pulse raced, the hairs on the back of my neck standing up. I knew I shouldn't go near it. I knew it was a trap. But something inside me, some twisted, sick curiosity, drove me forward. I couldn't help myself. With trembling hands, I reached for it. The mannequin's eyes were fixed on mine, and the closer I got, the more I felt like I was being pulled in, as if the figure was drawing me in like a magnet. Suddenly, the mannequin spoke. "Do you wish to leave?" The voice was low, raspy, like the sound of dry leaves scraping across the floor. I took a step back, my mouth dry and my heart pounding. I couldn't think, couldn't breathe. What kind of place was this? I don't know, I stammered. I need to leave. I have to. The figure's lips curled into a grin, wide and too perfect. Then you must pay the price, it said softly. All who leave must pay. I swallowed hard. Pay the price? What price? Wasn't simply surviving enough? The mannequin took a step forward, its form shifting unnaturally, as if it were no longer made of solid material. I felt a rush of panic, and the urge to flee surged through me. But before I could move, I heard the voice again, not from the mannequin, but from everywhere. Remember, it whispered, the rules are not a choice. They are a debt. My eyes widened in horror. The words, the feeling, everything about this place, the store, it was alive. Not in the way a living creature breathes and moves, but in a way that pulsed, thrived, and demanded payment. I realized then that the rules were not just things to follow. They were promises I had made the moment I set foot inside. And promises here had gone. I turned around and ran, pushing past the rows of shelves, the dark corners that threatened to swallow me whole. But the store was alive now, the walls closing in, the floor shifting beneath my feet. I was trapped in its winding maze, with no escape in sight. I heard the sound of footsteps behind me, slow and deliberate. Someone or something was following me. And then I saw it, the sign, the one from before. But now, it was different. It wasn't just a warning. It was a command. 8 rules you must follow to survive the 24-hour antique store. Break one, and the store will claim you. The letters were glowing now, burning into my mind, and I understood. I had broken the rules, and now the store was coming for me. Part 10, the final choice. I ran. No, I sprinted through the aisles of the store, my legs burning, my lungs gasping for air. My heart hammered in my chest, and my mind raced with panic as I tried to make sense of the nightmare that had swallowed me whole. The footsteps behind me had grown louder, closer, relentless. It was no longer the sound of something trailing me. Now it felt like something was gaining on me. The air had become thick and suffocating, the walls pressing in from all sides, as though the store itself was closing in around me. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see a monstrous figure chasing me. But there was nothing, just shadows stretching unnaturally in the dim light. Yet the sense of presence, the feeling of being hunted, was overpowering. Every inch of me screamed to keep moving, but my body was starting to betray me. The exhaustion, the panic, the terror, it was all too much. Then I saw it. The door, the exit. It was right in front of me. A single door stood at the far end of the hallway, bathed in a strange, ethereal light. My pulse surged with a glimmer of hope. I could make it. I could escape. But as I took a step forward, the ground beneath me shifted again. The door flickered, blurring, distorting, as if the store itself was playing tricks on me. I stumbled, my feet slipping on the wooden floor, and when I looked up again, the door was gone. No. I collapsed to my knees, gasping, my mind struggling to comprehend what I was seeing. The walls had shifted again, and the space around me was no longer the same. The layout had changed, and the aisles I had just passed were now twisted and unfamiliar. The store was alive. It wasn't just a place. It was a being, a force that fed on fear, on chaos, on people like me. I stood shakily, my hands reaching out for anything to steady myself. That's when I heard it again, the voice. Not from the mannequin, not from the walls, but from the very air around me. It was close now, almost like it was breathing in my ear. "Do you wish to leave?" it asked, its tone as soft and unsettling as it had been before. But this time there was something darker, something more sinister, lurking in the words. I froze. I knew this was it, the moment where everything would be decided, the final choice. I had broken the rules. I knew that now. But could I make it out? Was there even a way to survive after all I had done? My mind reeled back to the first rule I had ignored, to the first warning I had dismissed. The weight of the promise, the debt I had incurred, pressed down on me. The walls around me groaned, the shadows shifting once more, and I felt the presence closing in on me, suffocating my every breath. A cold chill crawled down my spine as I realized the truth. There was no escaping this place. Not now, not ever. I took a deep breath and stepped forward. There was no time to hesitate. The store would take its toll whether I tried to run or not. My only choice was to face it head on. The voice whispered again, softer now, almost like a sigh. "Then you must pay the price." I swallowed hard, my throat tight with fear. The moment I'd stepped inside, I had made my choice. I had broken the rules, and now the store was claiming its payment. But as the shadows closed in, something strange happened. The walls, the aisles, the mannequins, all of it shifted. The store itself seemed to warp, and the oppressive darkness began to recede. The air lightened, and for a brief moment, I thought I saw something beyond the store. A faint outline of sunlight, the shape of the outside world. I stumbled toward it, every step feeling like it might be my last. The air felt fresher now, the light warmer. Was I escaping? Was this the end of the nightmare? As I reached the threshold of what seemed like the exit, I felt a cold hand grip my shoulder. I spun around, but there was no one there, just an empty space. The mannequin from before, its lifeless eyes, stared at me from the far corner, its grin wider than I'd ever seen it. And then I understood. The price wasn't something the store wanted from me. It wasn't money or life or even my soul. No, it was far worse than that. The price was my memory. The store didn't just trap you physically, it trapped you in the endless cycle of forgetting and remembering. Every time you thought you had escaped, it would take a piece of you with it, until there was nothing left to take. I wasn't leaving the store. No one left the store. The store was now inside me. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of the knowledge pressing down on me. I had become part of the store, another lost soul wandering the aisles, doomed to follow the rules for all eternity. And with that final realization, the door slammed shut. The store had claimed its final prize. Psst, thank you for staying till the end. If your heart's still beating, maybe it's time to like, share, and subscribe. We'll be waiting here every week with a new nightmare just for you. Remember, in the silence, something always listens back.